We will now shift our attention and talk about the idea of correlation in simple linear regression. As usual, let's take a look at the learning objectives, what we want to make sure we get out of these next several videos. First of all, we want to be able to visually determine if a linear or curvilinear, and this curvilinear, we're going to actually talk more about a monotonic relationship. That's supposed to be a C right there. Monotonic, there we go. Between two quantitative variables. We want to measure and interpret the strength of a linear or a monotonic. There's that curvilinear thing we're talking about, the monotonic relationship. We want to construct and interpret the regression equation that relates two quantitative variables and make inferences regarding the population parameters. And there's a couple of different parameters here that we will be discussing. So as a quick review, we looked at this in an earlier chapter. We looked at the idea of a scatter plot. And if you have a variable that you're going to list on the x-axis and a variable on the y-axis, as a quick reminder, every point on the graph will have both x and y coordinates. And when we look at a scatter plot, maybe it's something as simple as height versus a person's weight. What we expect to see is as the height increases, so would the weight. So what we'd expect to see is a trend, hopefully linear. And the reason I say hopefully linear is because it's very easy to measure if it's reasonably linear. And what we talked about earlier was this would be a positive trend. And if we saw maybe just the opposite, in general we saw something that as the x variable increased, the y variable decreased, they would think of this as being a negative trend. And the reason being, if we fit a line through here, the slope of this line would be negative, whereas the slope of this line would be positive. We also talked about the idea of if you did a scatter plot and basically what you saw is a blob, this really has no trend. So what we're going to do now is actually provide a method of assigning a numerical value to measure the strength of that association. And we do that using what's known as correlation. And then the next step would be, well, can we actually find the equation of this line that would best fit the data and use the line for predictive purposes? And that brings us to the idea of simple linear regression. So in the next video, I'm going to talk or introduce the idea of Pearson's correlation, which is a measurement of linear association.